All right, good morning, or actually good afternoon. I am Nancy Della Noche with ACT-IAC, and welcome to this month's Resilient Infrastructure COI member meeting. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on ACT-IAC's YouTube account afterwards. I will also be sending the slides shared at this meeting. We encourage you to use a chat to post questions, comments, and feedback. The COI will be monitoring the chat throughout the meeting. And now I'll pass the mic over to Pete, the COI Industry Vice Chair. Pete, take it away.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you all who are attending today. The good news is if you're distracted or need to leave, we will be presenting this for viewing later, but we hope you stick around with us today because there's a lot of wonderful information from a lot of mostly our young upstarts, and I could say that at almost 60 years old, rock stars here in government. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to set a little context for a quick second. We are a community of interest, as it shows on screen. Our focus is on the nation's critical infrastructure sectors, of which there are 16. You've probably heard of these. You could find out a lot more at dhs.gov. We also speak to the 55 national critical functions of government that are aligned with these sectors. Today, we're going to be focusing on the water and the wastewater sector, and you're going to hear from our guests, our thought leaders across industry as to why this is one of those sectors that everybody, I think, appreciates and understands is necessary for life and humanity, but also is and can be at risk. So that being said, there'll be some context around and references to documents we hope that our audience can review. But yes, for the most part, you're going to hear about a project that has been instrumental and underpins a lot of what the RICOI stands for. With that, I'm now going to kick it over to my colleague, Sunny Westcott, who's going to give us a more crystallized picture or illustration given her role. So Sunny, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Sunny Westcott. I'm a chief meteorologist by trade, focusing on the critical infrastructure sector for the federal government. As far as extreme weather impacts, things like heat and drought are critical for when we're doing site planning and selection going forward. It's also critical to understand that those overlapping needs will continue to rise as our infrastructure continues to grow. So it's analyzing both what is in place and what is coming to be in place. So we're looking at things like climate threats through the extreme heat, drought, water security is a big part of the conversation, but also looking at the amplification of these trends going forward over the next 10, 15, 30 years. So we're looking at research leadership sides of the house, everything from our national labs who have done some great work in trying to find new cooling suggestions, as well as looking at better site selection. DHS is really focused on data centers as a national security objective. So we're really focused on not only encouraging that innovation, but making sure that we're sharing these best practices, we're sharing the resilience threats, and we're sharing exercises like this going forward across the board so that we're amplifying the general understanding of the threat on the horizon. So this war game as a value add to everybody will help to drive home a lot of these implications across the board and provide some actionable insights as we move forward within these sectors. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Pete so that we can kick off today's meeting.
Wonderful, Sunny. And Sunny is available, folks, through the chat. And then later in the program, she might pop back in. But please take advantage of Sunny, her background. Google her. She's tremendously well known and recognized throughout the federal community, but also, as was mentioned, in the academic environments as well. I want to emphasize one thing before I introduce the team, that, you know, the RI, the Resilient Infrastructure Community of Interest, seeks to educate, empower, and identify, share, and explore with our community. So those of you who are on today or those who may watch at a later date, we encourage participation because we know this is the kind of topic that, while technology plays a role, it's really, you know, the meat on the bone is those sectors that we need. It's our food, it's our weather, it's our water, it's our energy, it's our manufacturing, and we really want to humanize those sectors, and that's the goal, both today and moving forward. All right, without further ado, our guests today: Don Palumbo, Maximus; James Glenn, IAC; Maddie Lind, Leidos; Sophie Albamino, Visa; Taylor Roberts, Leidos. Shout out to Kim Pack at AIS and Laura Smith for being coaches along the way in this project. And of course, to Sarah Hughes, who's wonderful and runs all of these programs for the American Council for Technology Industry Advisory Council. This journey, this project started a while ago, and I think what you're going to hear, and we'll probably spend 15, 20 minutes working and talking with the team about sort of the passion project side of this that each of those individuals I just introduced represent. And how we're going to do this is I'm going to introduce Dom initially to kind of give us a perspective, talk a little bit about the objectives. James is going to speak to some of the war game simulations as well as Dom. And then, of course, Maddie, Sophie, Taylor are going to be chiming in, as well as we might even pop up a few illustrations that address the next stage or strategic thought, and then, of course, policy and recommendations. So without further ado, and I'm not reading anybody's bio, Dom, if you can set the stage for us and the team, floor is yours, buddy.
100%. Thank you, Pete, and thank you to the Resilient Infrastructure COI for putting on this webinar today. It's a great opportunity for us to showcase our passion and our experience and some of our findings that we uncovered through conducting this project. So to set the stage on why we chose this topic and kind of the passion behind our work. When we first got together, we wanted to do something that mattered, something that was a little bit different from just presenting some information. We wanted something that was going to be long lasting, that would have some legacy to it, that would have downstream impacts for not just the COI, but for anybody else who wanted to adopt a similar model and apply their data to it. Any benefit that they could glean from it, that would be such an honor for our group, just kicking it off. So when it came to data centers specifically, this was something that hit for me a little bit close to home. Since I grew up in Coal Region in Pennsylvania, not too far away from where Pete's grandparents grew up.
We might be related, folks.
That's true. Energy production was something that I grew up with. I grew up around the mines. I grew up around an area that was somewhat abandoned by industry and largely by the federal government after years of pushing American industry to the forefront. That was something they didn't consider the environmental impacts of what they were doing at the time for the sake of American industrial advancement. And now a big economic revitalization effort in the area is the implementation of data centers. There's a data center not too far away from where my grandparents live that no longer can sustain its energy needs with traditional energy production, hard lignite coal. So they're burning coal comb, which is the tillings, which is loaded with heavy metals and a lot of the poison that had been left over from the mines in years past. And recently they've gone to cogeneration, which relies on burning, as they call it, alternative fuel sources. So things like tires, trash, other energy dense materials, without much consideration for the exhaust or for the wastewater that's produced from it. So that initially kicked off my interest in data centers, and as they proliferate along with the proliferation of artificial intelligence and its implementation in a lot of technology, this was something that kicked off my interest and pretty quickly spread to the group. So when it came to the wargaming scenario and why we chose that, we wanted to evaluate how the ongoing environmental changes are going to impact data centers from several different aspects. We wanted to choose environmental strains that were realistic and that had high potential, specifically in Northern Virginia, since that's where everybody, for the most part, lives, and that's, as we identified, the highest concentration of data centers in the United States, known as Data Center Alley, specifically in Loudoun County. We selected drought as droughts have become more common, specifically, well, not specifically in anywhere, but nationwide, as well as an isolated heat wave incident, since those are extremely common and are becoming more and more severe as time progresses. I'll kick it back to you, Pete. I think that pretty well establishes
Yeah,
why we chose what we did, and
yeah, and
we'll get a little bit more into the findings.
yeah, and I appreciate that. And Nancy, at any given time, Nancy Delanoche, if some of the presentation that was delivered by the associates to the ACT-IAC community we address, feel free to pop them up right now. You folks are seeing the group that led this effort. I want to correlate before I ask James to start maybe explaining the scenarios and or the stages and the context around that, because data centers are critical infrastructure. We may think of it that way, we may not. We may think of this as an IT discussion, but we know environmental impact, weather specifically. Without power, things don't work. Without power, people, as I will say and say over it, people will die. And understanding that chain of events that can happen as a result of a water drought can impact a data center, which could impact a business and its ability to access its data. And as you see on screen here, some of the scenarios and simulations that were discussed. So there is an IT and an operational technology, a critical infrastructure discussion here, and it's meant to, again, hopefully paint a picture of how you think about a data center moving forward and the dependence on water. So with that, Dominic and or James, I'd like to move into some of the war game simulation and the stages, if some of that can be explained and articulated while we keep those metrics up on screen. James?
Yeah, so how the stages worked is that the further the stage, the more uncomfortable it really gets. So, like for instance, in stage two, I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but and there's a story in 2002 and 2010 when reservoirs ran low and people started panicking about car washes, sprinklers, all that stuff. And when early decisions matter most in Cape Town, South Africa, for instance, they called it day zero, where the day taps were expected to run dry, but it didn't happen because the city pulled together early, and people reduced, the use of industries and made sacrifices, and the city brought a lot of time. So we can't wait for things to break before we act, and resilient communities don't usually panic in crisis. They prepare together early, and the small sacrifices, that are made now are prevent, from big disasters to happen later. And one other instance for instance, in stage four, we kind of have a severe drought and water restrictions and tension. And imagine like the state banning all non-essential water use, like no car washes, no watering lawns, and still watching corporate facilities run as usual. So like the Oregon story I mentioned to you earlier in the week, Pete, is that in Oregon, Google's data center alone found out that the company was using millions of gallons of water even as the community was asked to conserve the water, and there was an outrage, right? That was huge, and people felt like the system was rigged, and there was new transparency laws and stricter limits when that came upon, and it kind of brought a hit here, sort of, because now. From I talked to one of my colleagues is that we're building more data centers near my area, down in Dumfries, Virginia, in 234. It would test not just our infrastructure, but our trust, in the local government, and in the big companies, and whether our communities actually come first. So when people lose trust, resilience breaks, and technology can't function without public confidence. And if the public believes the system isn't fair, every solution really will fall apart.
Yeah, before like James wonderfully articulated. Nancy, if you could bring up the slide that shows the different stages that James just hit on. And again, this is going to open it up to the team. And you could see there that this progression of a scenario for the war game and the simulation, which I found to be very compelling, is the what ifs and what could happen and why does it matter concept. So Dom, you, or if you want to introduce one of your colleagues who want to speak to these war game simulation stages, I want this to set the stage for what we'll talk about in terms of policy recommendations and strategic path forward.
100%. Quickly, though, I'd like to touch on a couple metrics to highlight before we got into the stages. Nancy, if you could go back to the previous side of the infographic. Excellent, thank you. So as far as stage progression was concerned, we wanted to reflect in the drought a small compounding percentage change in water consumption through each stage, ultimately resulting in a 15% public usage increase and a 30% data center increase. Now, those are proportional. Um, The public obviously consumes more water than data centers, so that 15% is weighted more heavily than the 30 for data centers. And then during the heat wave, the power strain is reflected by 25% public usage increase and 20% for data centers. But to touch on the key metrics, that 24 gigawatts that you see, that was identified through our research as the critical threshold for power consumption in our area of operation, which was Northern Virginia. Once power consumption is at that 24 gigawatt threshold, there's isolated brownouts. And once it goes beyond that 24 gigawatt, now that's within an hour, 24 gigawatt consumption, the grid is subject to long-term damage and potential long-term blackouts. To the right, you see that 255.75 MGD, that stands for million gallons daily. That is the total water production capacity of what is called the DC water triad, which is the collection of water treatment plants that supports the entire DMV. So that's Maryland, DC, Virginia, Northern Virginia, which is supported by 3 water treatment plants and supported by 1 large aquifer and several auxiliary reservoirs in each area, respectively. Once 255 million gallons daily is exceeded, that is the threshold where reservoirs need to become tapped to sustain water consumption. That 255 million gallons daily, that is the daily production capability. So once that's exceeded, you have to go to reserves. And one thing that was identified that I like to touch on that I want to be in the front of everybody's mind, specific to Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia is only reliant on 1 water treatment plant, that being in Fairfax. And they are at a severe disadvantage as far as auxiliary reservoir capacity. Through our research, we identified that Northern Virginia, should they not be able to transport reservoir water through DC, has 1 day of auxiliary water capacity. So should that Fairfax water treatment plant fail and they not be able to transport water from Maryland aquifers through DC to Northern Virginia can only sustain itself for 1 day at current consumption rates. So as we move forward, I'd like you to keep that in mind. I'll pass it on to Taylor, Sophie, or Maddie to touch on the backside of this graphic and explain a little bit more about the stages and potentially the graphic production as well. I just wanted to highlight some of those statistics before we move on.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dom, I can take it from you. So if we go to the next slide, I went ahead and I built out this Canva to really highlight stages 1 to 2 and 1 through 5. And we really wanted to emphasize kind of the color to show how drastic in between these stages can really be. So with stage 1, we wanted to develop the initial scenario. We established the baseline metrics to define what the normal conditions would look like for drought levels in the data center power usage. So these were drawn from multiple public available databases to ensure the transparency. And in the baseline simulation, it's a moderate spring day in May of 2026 with the average precipitation and typical power consumption reflecting on a business as usual environment. And kind of as we go through the stages, it really starts to kind of get worse with our drought scenario. So in the second stage, it reflects the departure from a seasonal rainfall averages, signaling the onset of drought conditions and increasing water consumption. So the DMV is now under an official drought warning, prompting early community water conservation measures. And so then kind of going down into the third stage, it marks kind of a clear escalation in how bad the drought really is getting. And there's dry conditions, rising temperatures, and increasing power demand. So this is when the government would issue an official drought declaration and implement formal water conservation mandates. Data centers now at this point would start to look at different cooling methods to continue to run these big centers. And then kind of moving into stage 4, Here, it's really, really starting to get bad. We're at an extreme escalation in the drought. The state of Virginia issues a ban on all non-essential outdoor water usage. And the public really starts to get frustrated as major technology companies continue to operate here when there's a big drought going on. And then our final stage, it shows a severe disaster scenario. So where it's critical drought conditions and it pushes the infrastructure in community to their limits. National security data centers supporting military operations, intel, and cybersecurity remain operational while commercial data centers are using air cooling systems. This disruption will lead to major impacts on the community, businesses, and this will even have an uneven distribution of water resources around the different communities. So this is really where we start to see the people really getting affected by these big data centers taking up the water that would be used for those that are, really getting hit by this drought. So if Taylor or Sophie, if you kind of have anything else to add, but that was kind of a quick run through of our wargaming scenario and just kind of the areas we wanted to highlight on our infographic to really show how dangerous the droughts can be in the surrounding communities and data centers.
Yeah, before we jump to Sophie or Taylor, I just want to remind the audience that this is what I found just amazing is in hearing this simulation, we don't really know until we're in the middle of it. Sometimes it could be a weather event, but the dependency on data centers, which I think the impact, as Dom pointed out, or James as well, and the team, the AI revolution, the evolution of the data center is critical. So all of us here in the DMV, we're working with federal government and industry and academia to move that needle. There's a lot of money that gets spent every year on technology, and the data center's kind of never gone away, but it's that facility. It exists, and it depends on communications. It depends on protocols. It depends on data being protected. So I just want to remind everybody that this simulation, which exponentially, in theory, it would get worse and worse and worse to where we don't have access to that information. I think it's just a wonderful illustration, Maddie. So thank you for sharing. So Sophie, let's go to you. Is there something you want to augment? I know we can get to some of the strategic lessons and recommendations, but feel free to add some color.
Sure, Pete. So I know we're looking at a lot of numbers, and I think our goal as a team is to turn this into a tangible recommendation in federal policy that can inform future data center use operations. So I think having crunched these numbers and created this model, we initially saw some key takeaways that could inform future data center operation policies. For one, being diversifying water cooling strategies to anticipate those water supply shortages. And the other is the importance of building community trust and clear lines of communications that when these vital systems do go down, there's a clear path forward for community response. And also the importance of developing water management frameworks to guide these resource allocations. I think we also want to stress that this is just one specific use case. We could see this model applying to other types of natural disasters, including but not limited to, flooding and wildfires affecting key infrastructure like bridges, or extreme heat impacting telecommunications and energy systems. But I'll pause there, Taylor, if you have any more color to add or context as we transition from the model to the broader implications.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a great introduction. Like Sophie said, just want to emphasize too that, this is just one specific simulation focusing on, one natural disaster, but obviously we wanted to ensure that this simulation could be utilized for a lot of other problems and data sets, as Dom had mentioned as well. So a lot of the strategic lessons and recommendations that we provided in our presentation were definitely honed in on water scarcity and droughts, but want to ensure that it can be applied to other problem sets too. And I'm happy to kind of touch on some potential next steps as well, because we'd love for this project to be, implemented, like I said, to other natural disasters and implemented to droughts in the future too. So some next steps that we wanted to highlight were potentially identifying opportunities to combine this wargaming simulation tool with the Resilient Infrastructure COI data center placement tool, and also want to look into ways that we can foster cross COI collaboration, as well as collaboration with various federal agencies or state agencies as well, to ensure that this, data that we accumulated and simulation can be utilized for broader good. And also just want to kind of socialize the strategy that we came up with to, more technical folks in ACT-IAC, just to inform, development of a more specific proof of concept and a minimal viable product that could be used as well. Again, to kind of support the impact of droughts on data centers, but also, the impact of droughts and other natural disasters on various other forms of infrastructure as well.
That's great. I'm going to jump back in because I know that this presentation and this story, which has now been laid out, I'd like to dive into some of the not the now what, but what you, as you went through this, each of you, and I might start. We'll go back to the top here with Dom. I mean, we've heard about recommendations, whether it's related to, and I'm looking at some of my notes that I took away, environmental, economic, there's implications, right? Hardened water use, reuse policy, seasonal noise reduction, building with the right alternative or distributed energy. During this journey, this project that, in the realm of it being an ACT-IAC, which we know is an IT consortium of where there's networking that's happening, how you all, as you progress through this idea of a simulation of the what if of when we take off our hats and we go home at night and our dependence on maybe a data center, but in the context of you want your internet to work. I have 4 kids. When the internet's down, Dad, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm calling Verizon, or I'm hoping it's not the router I installed. It's all this, the impact of just having communication, I think, that's dependent in this case on the water sector as it relates to data centers. What impact did it have on you? What did you glean, Dom? And I want to go around the room. Dom, what did you learn from this process that you were like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it like that, being an IT guy?
The one thing that was pretty evident to me is industry is largely focused, and I understand as an IT industry, it's our job to progress technology. But one thing that kind of stood out to me is the lack of advocacy for developing the infrastructure around the technology, the grid, our water capacity, the logistics that surround both. You would never build a house on a foundation of sand. It's not stable. You need a solid foundation to run the technology, otherwise the technology can't function. I mean, largely the grid as we know it today was built in the 1970s. I mean, we're relying on a 20th century grid to support 21st century technology, and pretty advanced 21st century technology at that, that has unforeseen power and water demands, along with other demands like human capital as well. So with more people moving to the area to support such technologies as well, that's going to increase public usage on top of it. One thing I think industry can do that stood out to me is become good stewards of the tech. And a part of that is advocating for some more investment in the infrastructure instead of the tech. One does not go without the other. And you need a solid foundation to run the advanced tech. So while industry pushes the tech forward, we also need to, in tandem, advocate for better infrastructure. As we lobby the government and we say to the government, this is where this technology needs to be implemented to support that. And this is also hand in hand with national security, as well as all of the other benefits that this advanced tech would bring. You need to support it. So that's one usually stood out to me.
Yeah, let me comment. My style is
Sure.
like you're giving me light bulb moments. So James, I'm going to come to you in a second, but let me just take what I heard Dom say, and I'd love you all, as I'm going to go around the room here, Taylor and Sophie and Maddie. Dom, you just hit on the point, right? As a company that sells services into government, but also doesn't say we have a solution and we can make, we're a silver bullet solution. It's kind of like, what's the mission, right? Mitigating risk to mission. I think a lot of what I took away from your presentation, and we said at the outset when we first went on this journey together, was the mission of government, not writ large, but each agency. In this case, water touches every agency. The EPA has a role, the DOE has a role, of course, but water. And then you think about it in a different light when you're at home. I mean, I'm sure everybody hopefully will drive home today and be thinking differently about, those big water towers. And what if there wasn't any in there? Something was damaging those, right? That's when it hits home. But I'll say this to Dom, you wonderfully just did what I like to convey, and that is this convergence of information technology and operational technology. The ping, the power, the pipe, the communications, the physical hardware. And I don't mean routers and switches, folks, but the stuff that we depend on that you see every day, the power lines, you flip a switch on, that's your operational technology that IT can hopefully help mitigate risk to. But thank you, Dom, for hitting on the cyber impact. And of course, there's an AI impact which is going to demand more power. So that was very humanizing. I appreciate that. Brother James, you have great example after example. You were just talking my ear off on Friday at ELC, and I loved it. What impressed you, or what really hit home for you going through this project journey?
Oh, when you look at the neighborhoods in general. I mean, I live in a nice community, in Potomac Shores down in Dumfries. And, when you look out day to day and you see kids playing outside, or, just even washing my car, because I am a car guy and everything else. It's really just all the storytelling. Like, I love to watch and read stories and everything else like that. And what took me away on that other side note is that, with Dom's story really impacting me a whole bunch. And I know that, the low reservoirs and all that good stuff. Obviously, I was a child at the time and not really, looking at the current events. But I will say it like this, is that with Dom stating, Fairfax and everything else, I mean, the only city that does it the smart way with resilient infrastructure is really Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, they recycle the wastewater to cool the data centers, and they use the cool loop systems and design facilities to run on renewables. And it's proof that tech can grow environmental protection and it can coexist, which we can do the same here in Northern Virginia. And if we do, it sets a model for the rest of the country, because we are the biggest, we're just the biggest in general with all those data centers that are built. We have roughly 488 and still counting. So that's how that goes with me.
I will say this, one of my favorite lines, I have to give credit to Brian Eisenberg, but facts tell, stories sell. James, you're a storyteller. You all are, but that really resonated. And I would ask this, James, for future, and especially in the chat, if you want to now, is if you could find a link to one of those stories, whether it's in Arizona, feel free to throw it in there, because I think we hope that most people will walk away today. Again, you'll have access to the presentation. I hope the community watching today and down the road says, wow, that was great, great effort, rock stars in government, but actually learn something, because we want to educate in the process. Taylor, let me jump over to you. Your thoughts on this program and project and its impact on you?
Yeah, so one thing that I wanted to note too, as listening to Dom and James, obviously this was incredibly impactful as we were working on the project, and I've never worked on any similar research like this, so I was definitely not aware of how scarce and at risk our water supply is. But I want to emphasize too, just the shock in the room when we presented our project initially to our ACT-IAC Associates group and other sponsors that were there. People were really surprised and had a lot of questions just about how scarce our water supply is, and even on a business as usual basis, and just how at risk our water supply is, can be with any given drought. And I think just the pure shock from, I feel like almost everyone in the room, is just goes to show that greater advocacy, I think, is incredibly important here, and just greater collaboration too across government and non-governmental agencies and organizations, how that could make a massive impact in just advocacy in general, public awareness of how at risk our water supply is at any given moment.
Listen, that you're giving me kind of chills, because to me, hearing that coming, Leidos, great company, Maximus, great company, Visa, great company, we get caught up in data centers and cloud and cyber. I love that you all are having those moments. As a former federal chief technology officer who worked in the mission space, I always hoped that when vendors or industry would come to me, they would talk, yes, about a product and service, but how it aligned to my mission. And I'm just feeling, and I know this from working with you and Kim and Lori, that this has had that impact. And I hope it takes you into your pursuits with government mission capability mapping. And I think you're all going to be better for it. And I wish at your age, I was thinking that way, but awesome stuff. That was very, very motivating, Taylor. All right, let me jump to Maddie. Maddie, I'm not putting you on the spot, because I definitely want you to start with the impact it had on you. But I just want to put out there, hey, folks, we hear about supply chain. I mean, supply chains and technology, where something was built and then how it got over here and got put in this device and bippity boppity. I think we've been hearing about, as we see the data center evolve, the supply chain of just how water works. Don brought up, the dependence on an aquifer and just understanding where it starts, the physical water to heat a data center is something we have to think about. So physical security and, of course, cybersecurity once it's in the data center. Just be thinking about that. Now, Maddie, that wasn't to say speak on all that, but feel free to. I just think with AI being something big and data centers requiring more power, maybe you want to hit on that, or Sophie as well. But go ahead. What was your impact? What impacted you?
Yeah, so I think one thing that really impacted me, we always say our phones are listening to us. And so one day when I was on my phone, I saw a Vice episode about in rural Georgia, Mark Zuckerberg had put up a data center and the surrounding homes are unable to have strong water pressure and water comes out extremely slow. And this one woman was walking around, the Vice commentator, and had showed how they have to fill up gallon jugs of water when their water pressure is, coming out a little harder than normal. So they can use that to take like a proper shower to get the shampoo out of their hair. And I think that was one thing that really, after watching that, I really, really wanted to look into it because, we do live in the DMV area and, we're lucky that we do live in such a nice area. So we haven't seen this effect yet, but that is definitely something down the road that we're really going to start to notice with all these data centers popping up so fast is how us, living near these data centers, we're going to slowly see, these issues if it's a brownout while we're working and we're on an important call and all of a sudden our Wi-Fi is gone, or, going to take a shower and not thinking twice and all of a sudden the water's barely coming out. And so that was one thing that really, really stuck with me. So when we were doing all this research, I went ahead to kind of look at not only in the DMV, but all over the US, people who live in rural areas where these data centers are popping up overnight are really, really getting hit with the hard struggles of these huge, massive data centers that aren't really caring about them and their families who have lived there for, years. So that was definitely something that really hit home, at least for me, because that could be us one day.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I hope that this storytelling is something that you do more of with your agencies. Trust me, facts tell, stories tell. Sophie, I'm going to come to you in a minute, but I have to chime in on the words that Maddie mentioned. And again, I want to keep tying in for our community here that cyber threats or physical threats or security threats to the water industry, which is why I encourage, go to DHS, Google critical infrastructure, folks, read about the sector in and of itself. And you read it and you go, oh my gosh, there's not even an IT story. This is really about what we need. But there are things like exposure to OT and IT integration. The industrial Internet of Things is different than the Internet of Things. Supply chain, we talked about human factors. People and bad actors are taking advantage of the data center if not properly secured, both from an IT perspective and, as this team has pointed out, from an OT. No water, people die. Ultimately, sorry to be morbid. Sophie, we talked about diversifying cooling strategies, local communities, getting engaged, policy planning, crisis communication, all of that, it takes a village, right? But I think those are phenomenal. And those to me are opportunities for both government and industry to kind of speak about and then get into the solution and capabilities mapping. But what impact did you feel from this project effort?
Yes, I think for me, having made the pivot from public sector contracting into working exclusively for the private sector, I've really been able to see through working on an enterprise AI project at my current role, like the dissonance that exists between wanting to innovate and implement the latest and greatest AI technology, and then the lack of environmental resources to support those kinds of initiatives. I think being in rooms with technologists, there's a lot of talk about we need to innovate, we need to keep up with competition, we need to look into agentic AI, but there's really little to no conversation about, one, are these resources here to support that kind of technology, but also where the downstream impacts. I've even got to go on tours of data centers for my company in the Northern Virginia area, and there's an emphasis on, right, like, look how big it is, look how much energy we have, but there's really little talk of, right, how this is impact the community. Is this sustainable? So I think for me, seeing the impact of these extreme climate events on pieces of key infrastructure, I feel more empowered to elevate my voice in these rooms and say, well, have we thought about these downstream impacts that these decisions might have? Albeit I'm just a business analyst, I think it's an important conversation that needs to be had. And I know, and I can theorize that this isn't exclusive to my company. I think as a whole, there needs to be more of a pressure for the private sector to have an equal responsibility in make sure that these kinds of things are sustainable in addition to the public sector and the federal government.
Sophie, first of all, you're not just a business analyst. You're super forward-leaning. 2, downstream impact. I love that. That's tweetable moment. And 3, you work with financial institutions. I mean, at the end of the day, the 16 sectors, just to tie it up before I pass off to my friend Jim Sprague to talk about us and the RICOI and what we want to do in the new year. This is the kind of thing, this is the topic, this is the mission where most of the critical infrastructure we've talked about, specifically in the water sector today, is owned and operated by industry. And there's an onus when, if a bridge is in good shape or the telephone lines are up and working, look how many trees hang over power lines. Dominic brought up, industries that he grew up in, and you know what it looks like. Some of us are just, we don't see, but you ride home today and so forth. The data center has become something very dependent on that very aging infrastructure. We have to be thinking downstream. So Sophie, that was very, very, very enlightening for me. So thank you. All right, it's 12:42. I'm going to kick it over to Amy, actually, first, my colleague, and now you're going to learn a little bit more. I want to give a big shout out, though, to our thought leaders. There are some documents that we will reference. Here's a really good one titled Cybersecurity in the Municipal Water Sector, Background and Issues for Congress to think about. It was just published this year, earlier this year. There's more you can learn, but to Dominic, to Maddie, to James, to Sophie, to Taylor, keep that passion and that fire burning, and your companies are better for it because they have you on the payroll. And I'm just proud of you for what it's worth. And it was an honor to work with you. And we will look forward to hopefully celebrating you more in the future through the RICOI. So thank you. All right. So Miss Amy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, a huge round of applause for the associates. That was a really interesting project and presentation, and really a thrill to have you with us. And we hope you will stay with us with the Resilient Infrastructure Community Interest as you progress through your careers. It's really interesting to me because during my undergraduate studies in the late 1980s, I focused on aquatic resource management, and then and now realize that water is possibly the top limiting natural resource that can impact the future of our civilization. I mean, it's a big issue. And it's wonderful to have some young, smart minds thinking about how we can make better decisions about our technology and how that impacts our water supply. So thank you guys so much. And we'll just do please all hang on for some quick business about the Resilient Infrastructure Community of Interest. As Pete said, I'm Amy Norgren-Salvi with EtherForge and have been working with this group since 2022 when we were the ACT-IAC project focusing on the climate impact on government technology policy. So it has been my honor to serve as the industry chair, working with our government chair, Vera Ashworth, to form the climate change community of interest and then transform that group into the Resilient Infrastructure COI. But now it is my honor to introduce Jim Sprague, our new industry chair for the RIC COI. So I met Jim at our 2024 ACT-IAC Climate Conference when I was desperately seeking experts to help with the data center resilience project. I captured Jim, and he's been a member of our team ever since. So Jim is the Vice President for Analytics and Data Science at the Cadmus Group. Cadmus is a consulting company that tackles complex challenges around the world, from energy planning and economic growth to cybersecurity and infrastructure. Jim leads their data-driven transformation efforts to deliver insight-powered services to clients. So please welcome Jim to his new leadership role. Thank you, Jim. Over to you.
Thank you, Amy. Very, very gracious. And thank you for all your leadership in getting us to where we are today. I'm with you 100%. Cadmus focuses on water. That's how we met each other way back when. I know you know a lot of the folks, and water is so critical. And as we go, we'll take a quick look at 2025 and look forward. But I want to say that this is all about learning. I learned so much today on this call. Like just learning from Dom about like the kinds of dangerous things that are being burned to power data centers. Wow, that's an eye opener. And Pete, yes, as I'm driving and looking at those cooling towers, it's going to have a new appreciation for me and the urgency of solving these challenges. So we'll take a look at last year. Or this year, we'll take a look at what we're going to do next year. We'll talk quickly about the Data Center Resilience Project and give you some updates there. All right. So if we look back, I think it'd be an understatement to say that the beginning of the year was a lot of turmoil. And what we wanted to do is figure out how we evolve into the resilient infrastructure. Pete captured it very well. It's like, what is our mission? Critical infrastructure, and things that threaten those critical infrastructure systems. This can be natural threats and man-made as well. So to that end, what we accomplished this year is we had a great April webinar where we talked about data and how technology can help with data center resilience. We formed the Data Center Resilience Project. That's for site selection, and I think it's morphing into something that's going to be even better than that. We engaged the awesome 2025 associates class that just presented to us, and we did a membership survey, which is where we are going to really focus our efforts. From your feedback, we gained some themes that we should focus on for 2026. So let's take a look at these. AI, machine learning, data, how can all of that be used to and harnessed to really transform our infrastructure to be more resilient? And it's really that high quality data. You saw that in that April webinar, and we'll keep focusing on how can technology really help us optimize this critical path that we're on. One of the things that continues to come up is that we have aging IT infrastructures. Dom mentioned that, and the associates focused on the system. The grid's been around for a long time, and it needs a refresh. So we're going to look at solutions for our aging IT and physical infrastructure. And there's a lot of issues, funding issues, policy issues, that all has to be factored in. Another thing that we're going to be talking about is, Pete mentioned this as well, it's like there's health systems, transportation, IT, OT, all of these things. We should take a better, kind of more holistic look at this and figure out if we can model these things, be more proactive, and help build solutions for this. Finally, we're going to talk about these continued exploration of all of these risks that we mentioned and the impact on the grid. It's becoming clear that the grid and data centers, that combination of grid, data centers, energy to power them, it's the source of our modern life. And to do this, we're also going to start working with other COIs so that we can grab their expertise and talent and blend that into what we do as well. So here are some of the actions for 2026. We're going to focus on quarterly presentations. I hope it's not too much of a stretch. I would love to see one of these be a hybrid so we can do some in-person networking as well. It's a huge benefit for a member-driven organization like ours to connect, meet people. That's how I met Amy. That's how I met Pete in the past. It's like getting together in person. That's really going to be great. And we're also going to have some good webinars. We're going to continue the Data Center Resilience Project, so we'll update you along the way. And the COI engagements in the working groups, specifically with the AI and Internet of Things working groups, that'll help kind of really blend in and get different perspectives for us.
Jim, can I jump in just for a second? Thank you for that. And you just triggered
Please.
something. I would encourage our audience, and I'll put this together as well when we push back the in case you missed it today, because we will be sharing this out with those that couldn't attend today. But just this year alone, DHS has come out with primary mitigations to reduce cyber threats to operational technology. And again, think the water sector in this case. And that was earlier this year. And then just not even a week ago, DHS has pushed out principles for the secure integration of AI in operational technology. So throughout today and what we're hit on in some of these projects and what we hope for in 2026 is to take some of that forward leaning perspective. And we need those exemplars from our industry partners, the members of ACT-IAC. We're happy to celebrate any company and their mission and use this platform. Over to you, Jim.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete. This is a quick recap on our data center resilience project, and thank you for the shout out from the associates to engage with us, and we'd love to continue that dialogue. So we know why we're doing this. We've heard about it on this call. Data centers are so critical, and a loss of a data center, one or more, it's a big deal. We've seen this in the news all the time. So what are we doing? We're building a tool. We're building, it is a way for us to start. It's at the end of the day, it's to gain awareness. This tool is to make you aware, right? Government staff, industry, people that are just interested in these issues, to help awareness and to help make decisions on where to put data centers and all of the things that go around it, noise, energy that's produced to facilitate these data centers. Like there's a lot to think about, and we believe that we can be a big help in providing a platform that helps with that education and some of that impactful decision making. All right. Here's a couple of screenshots and also a call to action. But this is the beginnings of our data center site selection tool. And again, we're going to have a lot more in there as well. So if you want to get involved, please, we're looking for experts in data center, the grid, construction, legal help. Just join in, and you don't have to be an expert on data centers. Please, there's just other things that we could use help with, and we've got a great little crew now, but always looking for additional folks. Okay, so let's wrap this up. We're going to take those themes. We're going to put that into our FY26 planning. We've got some great upcoming meetings, and this one, I'm going to kick it over to Sunny because she can do it more justice. But in Q1, we're going to have a great webinar. So over to you, Sunny.
Yeah, so we actually have a lot of good initiative moving forward on the issues that we've seen over the last 2 years really start to ramp up with fires within the data centers themselves. Now, this isn't necessarily fires in the sense of wildfires, but actual combustion within the data centers. So things like batteries or cabinets overheating that house our different energy components for this level of load to move through to be able to propagate out all of the information that we utilize. It's a very large growing problem. You may have seen fires recently in Oregon, in Ohio, in Chicago, all at different data centers, as well as, of course, the overheating issue that we've seen just across the board in California and Oregon, as well as over in UK when they overheated there. But we did see a major fire and subsequent impact over there in South Korea earlier this year. That was their government's primary data center, subsequently taking a lot of their information offline, with restoration anticipated to be about 2 months. So as we go forward, just things to be aware of is that the data center market's doubled in size since 2020. We have 137 new hyperscale data centers just in the last 5 years. Those are 10,000 square feet or bigger. And in 2024, that number actually increased even further. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at the bigger problem being these large sites, the fire burning materials inside that can be highly hazardous and very difficult to put out. You can't use standard water in a data center when there's a fire on site. So we're looking at this problem as the energy sector grows. knows, as these sites come at risk from critical infrastructure aging out, some of these are buying old sites, moving them into warehouses. Some are building new sites, thereby needing to pay attention to what building codes are going to be utilized. It's a really good conversation, and we're going to talk with some of our different first responders who have had to respond to wildfires, subsequently also the in-person fires at some of these sites. So there's a twofold to be taken away from this. So it's not just climate, it's also the infrastructure in and of itself.
Thank you, Sunny. Wow, that is amazing. The growth and this critical threat that we're facing inside a data center. So awesome. These are the awesome things that we plan on tackling in 2026. Engage with us. We have a LinkedIn group that we're going to make more use of. Please provide feedback. We're going to post topics and little tidbits throughout the quarter. So we'd love to see you engage with us. This is for you. So we want to hear topics that are going to make you interested in engaging with our community of interest. So thank you very much. Looking forward to 2026. I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy for any kind of ACT-IAC wrap up, but we'll talk soon.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Feel free to reach out to me directly or any of the COI leaders you heard at this meeting if you have ideas, suggestions. As I mentioned earlier, this meeting was recorded, and I will be sharing the link once the recording has been posted on YouTube. In the meantime, I want to wish everyone a happy holiday and keep an eye out for 2026 events, ideas, projects, and cool stuff from the COI. So thanks, and see you next year.
Thanks, Nancy.
Nancy. Thanks, everyone.